I'm Betsy Mitten, and welcome today. I am delighted to interview my good friend and fabulous artist, Kimberly Crawford of Sincerely Yours, Kimberly. If you may already follow her, but I want to give you a little background, and that is Kimberly is not only an artist, she's a Skillshare educator, and she has appeared in Uppercase magazine, which is a surface design magazine. She's a fabulous surface designer, and if you're lucky like I am, you may have some products of Kimberly's and some designs from Society 6 or Spoonflower. Kimberly is also a wonderful gardener, and in honor of her gardening, I am drinking out of my garden mug today.
Ooh, I love that.
Rather than my usual Seacoast. So anyway, Kimberly, I want to welcome you here, and thank you so much for taking time. I know that you have a really busy schedule.
Well, thank you so much for having me. You're just so sweet, and I just appreciate you so much. And I love the friendship that we have formed since we took a big class together. And so it's just been, I'm grateful for your friendship, and I'm just excited to be here. I love all your followers. They're just so sweet and kind. And so this will be fun.
Well, thanks so much. And I was speaking to Kimberly before we before we hit record, and I said, I really have this mission, and my mission is to share the stories of creatives who have some life experience, who have done maybe more than one thing, and because sometimes it takes a little bit of time to look back and realize that's important. That's what made that decision. I took that risk, or I tried this thing. And the other thing, I totally believe it's never too late, but I also like to include why it's kind of never too late. That those years of experience can be really helpful. I also really understand. I remember I was sharing this story with Ashley Paggi that when I was in my late 30s, I remember I started a teaching job. And I remember saying, people, I'm really getting old. I'm going to be 40 in 3 years. And I said, so I get it why people feel that way as they approach a new decade. But I also now, like many decades later, not twice as old, but many decades later, now I just feel lucky. I feel lucky for the life experience. I feel lucky that I'm what I'm doing. And I can see how I needed that time. Like not everybody does, but along the way, I have learned some things. So anyway, that's really what I love about these interviews and finding different people's paths and how they got to where they are today. So without further, I have my questions, and I told Kimberly that we can have a conversation, but I often just, read the questions. So speaking of the path, though, I was wondering if you could share with us some of your experiences that when you look back, you realize, and maybe you didn't even realize at the time, but that have brought you to where you are today.
Well, that is a really good question. And I agree with you. I think in the time and the experience, sometimes we could be stressed out or emotional about things that are happening, or we're questioning it, and it doesn't make any sense. And then we can look back and go, oh, that's why those things happened. And it kind of puts all the pieces together and things make a lot of sense. So I agree with you completely. I think it is important. I don't know. My background is I am an elementary teacher and a high school softball coach by degree and trade. So I did those things first. I have always loved teaching. Everyone in my family teaches. One of my favorite memories is my little desk growing up where I taught school or I went to school or whatever. So teaching is a really important part of my life. And I was raised by a mom who is a fabulous seamstress. And I mean, she made everything we wore. She could make swimsuits, and she made all of her clothes. Like if we saw something cute, she would make it. And I think what always amazed me of her is she would buy a pattern, but she wouldn't like something, and she completely redesigned that pattern. And I do not have that brain, so that is a whole different level of creativity that she has that always impresses me. So I spent a lot of my childhood in fabric stores. I don't know if you remember like the fabric stores that have the round, I'd go crawl inside the fabrics and just touch all the fabrics and look at them and feel them. So I think that was something that in my childhood, I didn't realize would become so valuable to me as I got older. And then the other thing that became important to me was becoming a mom. That was a big thing. So I left the classroom so that I could be a mom. And then about the same time I became a mom, I was kind of looking for some things to do. And my hobby of paper crafting turned into my job. And it became a career that I had for 12 years working in the industry. And that's where I really got to start expressing my own creativity and realizing that, oh, I actually am a creative person. I've always wanted to be one. I just was told I wasn't. And all of a sudden I started figuring out, wait a minute, I am creative. I do come up with clever things. And not only that, I get to teach people how to make these unique things and be creative and encourage people's creativity. So I think all of those things kind of have led up to this point for me. And for me, going into surface pattern design never crossed my mind until I had a very a dear friend and a mentor say to me, it's time for you to start making your own designs instead of using everybody else's color palettes and patterns and whatever. You need to start expressing your own creativity and designing those. And so all those things just kind of have led me to where I am today. And there's a million lessons I could share from all the things that I've learned from working from home to being a very early content creator when it wasn't even a name, and understanding the balance of this online life and your creative life and how to be a professional about it. So there's just a ton of things. And like you say, I'm grateful to be at this point. And so lots of great things in life.
Well, it's really wonderful to hear your path because I don't know about when you were in school, but it used to be, and I think it's more open now. But when I went to college, it was like, well, you got a degree and then you work this, and really I like to compare my life, which has, I've really enjoyed. It's been really interesting to me, but it's more like tacking with sailing or switchbacks with hiking. I will go as far as I can and then there's something that's like, okay, I think I want to change direction. There's something that pulls me to it or I need to. Yeah. And the other thing you brought up, I really wanted to highlight is that, sometimes there's an individual or a situation or something that can make us feel like we're not artists or we're not creative or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
And how important that is to, I remember having, like we used to call it the tragic critique in art school or the person who kind of, maybe they're having a bad day, but how important it is. In hindsight now, I'm sure if something happened, you and I both would recover really like, oh, well, that's their opinion. But just if you have something, if anybody watching has something like that in their background where they feel like, so-and-so or whatever said something and maybe I'm not, I really believe, and I know you do too, that everybody is creative.
100%. And I remember it was second grade. I can clearly remember even the person. And I went and was growing up with a lady who is to this day an incredible artist and an art professor. Her art abilities were just off the charts. She was just a once in a lifetime phenomenon. And of course, nobody could compare to her because she was so unique, but didn't diminish the ability to be creative of anybody else. But we were all told, well, you had to be her if you were going to do anything in the art world, or you couldn't be a graphic designer because you weren't her. You didn't have these fine art skills. And that's totally not true at all. And so, yeah, I do want to encourage people. If you love being creative, you are a creative. You can make beautiful things and you can express yourself through your art. So don't ever let anybody tell you can't do that, ever. And it's never too late, too. So second grade, and it took me till my 40s to realize that, wait a minute, I can do creative stuff.
Absolutely. I had a period of time where I stopped doing certain illustrations because I just had kind of a cranky critique in art school. And then I realized that person was having a bad day. How many years did I waste? So I think sometimes it's good for people to hear those stories to realize, okay, that's somebody's opinion, or they're having a bad day or whatever, or
that's not their taste. Like there's always that too. That's not their wheelhouse. That's fine. Find the people who want to be in your wheelhouse.
Absolutely. And there's, literally billions of people out there waiting. So yeah, that is, what a great background. Well, thank you so much for sharing your path with us. Now, you've been involved with surface to pattern design for several years now, actually, probably longer than I've known you. And I'm wondering, how has that changed your path from what you were doing before? Like, where?
I think what it's changed for me the most, and it's been a little different, is I've gone from physical artwork. And what I mean by that is like using physical mediums, because I was using paper, dyes, and stamps and those kind of things. And now I'm doing it digitally because I want to be able to use it on products. And I think that's been a big switch for me. And it is hard for me. There are times I really struggle. So what I found is in my workflow, I have to make sure that I'm actually doing something physical with paper, and that I'm being creative with things with my hands, because that is important to me, and it is an important part of what I've developed through the years of how I'm creative. So yeah, so for me, I've had to make that switch of, and then also to remind myself that, I could take my iPad and I can draw, when I was paper crafting, I literally had to pack my whole office to have to work on things. I don't have to do that anymore. So learning some of those things about how I work and how to work, that's definitely been different.
Yeah, and I do understand, because I worked with dye pots for years. Yeah. And it was also like physically exhausting, because like wet fabric is, if you're doing it's really heavy, and it's, the dyes are toxic and there are all kinds of things. So I love learning digital surface design. As the time has gone on, I have seen how I need to continue to incorporate working with my hands, because I love to work with my hands and I love to move too. So you find that kind of sweet spot, I think.
Yeah. And a lot of times I'll be like, this week I've been experimenting with some things, and I don't know if I'll ever use it. I don't know if I'll ever share it with anybody, but my soul needed to make something different and differently. But I think I like the idea of taking, okay, this is how I would have made this out of paper or dyes. Can I make this digitally? How can I create this look digitally? I love to play with inks and watercolors and mediums that way. Could I do this with digital design? And so I think it's a good crossover. But like I said, I make a lot of stuff that will never see the light of day, because I'm just experimenting. I'm just enjoying a process, and the pressure of no needing to share it is really nice.
Yeah, I think so. And I know not everybody, I know you are now, or I think you're still an athlete, and you were very much an athlete when you were younger, and I was very much an athlete. And I often think that if we took that same approach to learning to draw, that, when you're learning a sport, tennis was my sport, how many balls like flew over the fence or serves into the net, but there's no permanent recording. And so I think, okay, well, that's maybe kind of an awkward sketch I've done. It's just that there's more of a permanent drawing of it. But to think that, you just keep going, and you can't get to that ace, for me, was always, I'd be like, please, I'm not sure that's what prayer is for, but, I like pray for aces. But I wasn't going to get those till I'd done like hundreds of baskets of balls. And I think for the most beautiful art that we're super proud of, we have to have that experimentation too.
That is a perfect analogy, and that is so true. And one of the things my husband always tells me, and before I got into the more digital design work, he's like, it's a piece of paper. He's like, it's a piece of paper. Ruin the 25-cent piece of paper. He's like, you're not ruining it. He's like, you're learning. You're learning something about things. You're learning about your medium, your hand, your vision. You're just learning. And he's like, it's paper. Use it. And even now, like on my iPad, who cares? I'll erase it 7,000 times and draw it again and draw it again. But every time I do, I'm learning something. I'm flexing my creative muscle. I am developing a skill. And really, when you're making all that stuff, you're developing your style, because you're finding yourself as you're going through this process of making things. And so your sports analogy is perfectly spot on. That is exactly true. Exactly true.
Well, thanks. And it sounds like you have a very supportive husband, and I do too, and it's helpful.
It's very, and my son picked it up too now, and so it's pretty cool. So I'm thankful.
That's wonderful. And it's like, you don't, as long as you've got somebody, maybe it's a peer group or a parent or whatever, but having some support is really, really lovely.
Yeah.
So, well, I told Kimberly ahead of time, I always have to glance at my questions. So,
I think smart.
oh yeah, well, so I know one thing that I really love is, and I think you've talked about this a little, and maybe we've covered, and if so, go ahead. But just that, I love how our history weaves together to kind of bring us to where we are now. And I think you have the stamping, but also your gardening and your love of flowers, and really your current work. To me is like this beautiful, and I know you're doing a lot of things right now, but it's this beautiful reflection of many of your deep loves.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's been, I really think where my work is at right now is truly that colliding aha moment of, oh my goodness. So I love my gardens and my yard and flowers. And that comes from my grandparents who had, I can't describe how many gardens and the flowers and all that. So we grew up with that. And then my parents were real big vegetable gardeners. So I learned some of that from my parents. So I just have this family tradition of gardening, and it makes me happy. But it was interesting. So like, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago now, I was trying to watercolor a pine branch. I was working on Christmas, and I hated it. It had no life, personality. I was like, it was fine. It was perfunctory. It was fine. But I was like, this does not have any, it didn't have personality. It just didn't have something. And I was looking at this pile of ink I had in front of me that I was painting from. And I was like, if only I had a stamp. I just want to stamp this because it'd just be easier to stamp it. And then I thought, I looked out my window, which I'm looking at right now, and I was like, I have a pine tree in my backyard. And I thought, what would happen if I took a little branch and dunked it in the ink and put it on a piece of paper? What would happen if I did that? So I bundled up, ran outside with scissors. My husband's looking at me like I'm crazy, and cut a whole bunch of pine branches. And I just cut a bunch of stuff in the yard because I'm going to experiment. And I came in and covered it in ink, and it was a fail. And I was like, okay, well, I'm a stamper. I can do better than this. From my years of stamping experience, I can stamp on anything. I'm going to make this happen. And sure enough, there was, all of a sudden, it was just like this absolutely beautiful impression of a pine branch. And I thought, this is something that's really cool and has some serious potential. And so, I mean, I literally spent all of last year cutting anything I could find, asking my neighbors. I mean, they were like, you're crazy, lady. And like, they were very nice, but they thought I was nuts. And getting impressions of everything. And it's just been really cool to be able to take things that have personal meaning and take something that I used to be good at, but I've got the spin on it that I can use for digital artwork. And I don't know, it's pretty cool. It's an interesting, different technique. But it's so perfectly me at the same time, which I don't know, it was just such a magic moment. And those are very few and far between in life. So when they happen, you're like, wow, this actually came together. And so, yeah, I'm thrilled by it.
It's absolutely beautiful. And what I always love about those, I mean, I love all your work, but the prints, there's this, I mean, well, let me compare it to a dye pot. When I would do a formula and do everything, there's a certain point where you would put the work in the dye pot, and I'd say, it's like you release the work to the dye pot, and the dye pot gives you back a gift that maybe you could never have come up with. And I was doing like a kind of shibori. And I think I always feel the same way when I'm printing too. And I don't do the kinds of involved printing that you do, but that you have an idea, you ink it up, but then what you get is not, there's going to be texture, there's going to be maybe a little uneven, but it's like a gift that you maybe couldn't have even planned. And it's sort of releasing to the, saying, okay, well, what will this be? And I do remember when you were first starting this, I'm like, this is going to be really interesting and beautiful.
And it is really cool. Like I have all my impressions, but like some of my first ones are really bad. Like I just didn't know what I was doing because you're experimenting and working your way through it. Yeah. But I hung on to everything and kept things. And in fact, some of my terrible first impressions have turned out to be my favorite patterns now, like some of my favorite designs were what I thought was a mistake, but because it can manipulate them digitally, I was able to create something greater than just the individual thing could have been. And so I think that's the cool part. The other thing is I really struggle, oldest child, type A, a type 1 Enneagram person. Perfectionism is a really big problem for me. And so I always want everything to be so perfect, what I deem perfect in my mind. Nature isn't perfect. And it's the best thing to happen to me to get these off prints and these things that aren't quite perfect, because that's how nature is. There's nothing perfect in nature and nothing is spot on. And so I think that part of it's good for me too, because it pushes me out of this preconceived notion of perfection that I have. It really helps my creativity a lot.
Yeah, I can completely see that. I took a lot of scientific illustration, and I did find, and I'm so glad I had that background, because I do believe it has made me a much keener observer. Yet I love the freedom of the die pot, because there were things you really couldn't control, and that was a good thing for me.
For me too. It's a very good thing. It's a good thing for creativity. So yeah.
Well, you've done a lot of really wonderful things, and I'm wondering, I hear this question quite a bit, and it's easy to kind of get to a crossroads or to a point where, like, well, what do I do? And I'm wondering how you go about choosing your next steps. Is it something that naturally flows from one thing to the next, or sometimes some people research, some people plot it out, other people, actually I hear more often that something just kind of presents itself and grows, but I'm always interested to hear.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's kind of hard. I know, like, right now I'm kind of in a little bit of a lull spot, and it's okay. And that's the thing I've learned from my creativity in the past, is that your creativity is going to ebb and flow, and you have to learn to be okay with that. It's going to happen. You are going to just have days where you're on, and you're going to have weeks where you are off. And right now I'm just kind of in a lull. I'm in a low spot, and that's okay. So I'm just kind of waiting, because I know that something is going to present itself. Something I'm experimenting with is going to present itself. I'm going to see something, and it is going to spark that moment of creativity with me. And then I know I'm going to be off to the races again. And so that's the thing I like, is that my life experience in the past of being a creative for so long helps me not panic in these times. I mean, don't get me wrong, I had a little pity party for myself yesterday, but I got out and I came down to my office and I was like, you must do something in here, whether it's just putting something away, get down in there and do it. And it always helps. But I think it's giving yourself, it's okay. It's okay to not be cranking stuff out, every single day. One of the biggest things I know for myself is as an educator and loving to learn myself, when I've got these low times, I take classes. I go to Skillshare and I take classes, or I watch somebody's YouTube tutorial that they post about on Instagram. And I think when you're in a lull of your creativity, nothing sparks something than learning something new. And so I just find that right now, you know what, it's really good for me. I've had some thoughts in the back of my mind of, I wonder if I could do something with Photoshop. I'm going to go into Skillshare and see if somebody's got a class about that. I can watch them work and go, oh, this is how I could use that in my own work. And so those are some of the things when I have those low points and that things that I'm not working on at the moment. As far as things I know I need to work on, there's always I need to work on my portfolio. I need to submit it to other places. I need to do some more colorways of my fabric for Spoonflower. Just some of those things, they're always there. But it's okay to honor that downtime that you need, because life is just going to ebb and flow. And so it's okay.
And that's really such a great explanation, because we all have different things that are happening in our lives too. But what I hear is this consistency of showing up and also honoring your schedule. Kimberly
Yes.
and I were talking about, like when my daughter was graduating from high school, well, I didn't worry so much that week about, she needed to be the focus because she's heading off, and that's, was precious time. So, but also you have your strategies too, like, okay, I'm feeling XYZ. these are the things. And taking classes has always been something I've loved doing and learning. And I don't just take one, if I'm learning something, I like to take a lot of classes by somebody and then by other people too, to get different perspectives.
And, I know I said, oh, I'm taking a class on Photoshop because I had this thought. Sometimes I'll take a class on crochet, or something about cooking or baking or something. Just something that you're actively doing that's different, that might be engaging a different part of your brain. So, don't just think that you got to, I can only take surface design classes. No. I'm just talking about any kind of learning that gets you into something different so that you step away from this thing you've bogged yourself down with. And I've made this pattern for 3 days now and I can't fix it. Walk away and do something else.
That is a really good point too, because it often is when you're doing something else that the new idea comes. And I can't tell you how many people in history in fact, I like to walk. And they're like, oh, I would walk we'd walk every day. And that's where I'd solve all these problems when I wasn't I'd get back and then it would help me. So that's great. And you have, how many Skillshare classes do you have now?
I just have 2 right now. I've started, and I have a 3rd one that's in the works right now. But like you said, some things have happened and it's just, it has to go on the back burner right now. And that's okay. I'll get it done when I can give my best attention to it. And I feel like my life things need my best attention and my class deserves my best attention. I can't split between the 2 right now. And that's okay. So I'm looking forward to my 3rd class. I'm excited about it.
Well, 2 is fabulous. And we will include at the end of this video, I always include a card with where to find people and where the classes are, because I've taken your Skillshare classes and they're fabulous. So it makes things very accessible. I'm wondering, and I think you talked about this a little, but when you're looking for inspiration, we all have these wells. And where do you like to look for inspiration? And are there specific things you like to do to fill your creative well?
So obviously my love of gardens and nature is a huge one for me. So we have a park just about 2 miles up the road that we love to go to in the evenings, the golden hour, of course, because I love taking photos also. So I love going and being there and taking photos and videos and just kind of soaking that in. And that's really good inspiration for me. Honestly, most of my inspiration comes from the mess that I'm working on, right? I find that my best ideas come when I'm actively doing something and actively creating. So whether I'm experimenting with something or trying something new, the ideas hit me. That's pretty common for me. It's just in the mess of making, I'll get inspired. And I think, I keep talking about, that terrible rose impression I made. I keep coming back to that. I've made some terrible patterns and I'm talking, they are awful, but I don't trash them. I keep them because I can't tell you how many times I've worked on another pattern and I've gone, oh, I know what to do with that now. You go back and you're like, oh, this doesn't work for this pattern, but it works for that one. And I go fix it. And then you're like, there it is. Sometimes it takes that walking away and doing something else. So inspiration just comes from the mess. And I think that's why people are always consistently work, because when you're doing and learning and making, that's when you're going to get the inspiration. Other inspiration, I do like Pinterest every once in a while. I like to scroll, but I'm mostly looking for home decor and some baking, but that can inspire things. One of my newest patterns is inspired by a bowl I just put up in my kitchen. But it turned out really cute. So I'm like, oh, that worked. And so I don't know. I think it's just in the quiet observations of things, just in the little things of life, the things that you notice. And I think you do an amazing job of that. I love when you go somewhere and in your Instagram stories, you're always posting, oh, this is pattern inspiration. This is color inspiration. And you slowly taken this walk and taken the time to just absorb everything that's around you. And while, you posted this tree bark photo, which was so cool. And I thought I wouldn't make a pattern from it, but there were different things I pulled from it that I thought were so inspiring. And so I think those are my inspiration places. So photos, and actually just being in nature and in the mess.
Those are just such great, it's great for people to hear too, where other people find inspiration. But yeah, I think about all your wonderful kayaking trips and how you immerse yourself in nature and your garden, and yeah, it can be it can be something in your house too. And it's kind of funny, I was looking at, we had an opportunity to go to Hawaii after my daughter's graduation, and I was looking at all my pictures, and I thought, these are probably not typical vacation pictures.
What is that? Oh, I remember why I took that photo now.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I fell in love with the little geckos there. And so we had...
I love the gold day coast geckos.
Yeah, so, but you're right. Everything around you can impact you. So, well, I always enjoy hearing where people find their inspiration. Kimberly has been featured in Uppercase, and this gives you a good idea, this piece right here, of her beautiful printed flowers and patterns. And this is your ink print, correct?
And that's the mess that I was talking about. Those are the ink impressions that I was like, I don't love these. These aren't great. And then I just went into the computer and like manipulated them and worked with them. And I ended up with that pattern, which is probably my favorite pattern to date. I absolutely love that because it just encapsulated everything I wanted to grab from those roses from my rose bush in the front. So yeah, I'm really excited about that. And I'm really honored. And I think, so for people that don't know my life before, I was actually a contributing editor to 2 different magazines in the paper crafting industry. Wow. And so magazines were really I was already doing paper crafting at home, but that's how I really got my start. And so I was published over 500 times, nationally and internationally. I had 7 or 8 magazine covers and a book cover. And so like, that was huge for me. That was a really big deal. I'm so proud of that and of the work I did for that. So then when I switched over to surface pattern design, to have the opportunity to be published for something I created completely on my own, the thrill of that, I cannot even begin to describe the excitement for me of seeing my own work being published. It is quite a thrill. And thank you for sharing that, because it means so much to me.
It's huge. And if you're, this is, Uppercase right here. If you are not familiar with Uppercase, it is an incredible honor to be featured in Uppercase. And so, and it's fabulous. No matter what you do, it's a fabulous magazine to subscribe to.
It's wonderful. I love the magazine. I hoard it because I just want to just touch it and love it. I love magazines. They are truly a part of my heart. And so I love this magazine. It's very inspiring, and the stories of artists in it are incredibly inspiring. So yeah, I would recommend that magazine highly.
It's terrific. Well, speaking of current work, are there other things that you're excited about or things that you're working through? It's fine to be like, well, I'm working through this process, or...
I am at a spot where I'm working through some process. So I have a couple of struggles I have right now. I love that rose pattern. I absolutely love that. But sometimes not all the flowers are conducive to patterns. And sometimes the impressions, I feel like I'm repeating myself, literally, no pun intended, on a repeating pattern. But I feel like some of them are the same design over and over again. And so I'm trying to figure out how I can best use my impressions in my artwork. And so I'm experimenting with a lot of techniques with paints and mediums and other things to try to create something on paper so that I can think about how I can move this digitally. So I'm at a little bit of a meeting point or whatever I'm trying to say, just a crossroads, I guess, of trying to figure out where to go with my work next. I also do like illustrating too. So I do have some really great illustration things. So I'm trying to balance the 2 of those out and try to figure out how I can make myself stand out, but still be my style. So I'm working through some of that. I think the other thing I'm working through, and I think everybody in surface pattern design is my portfolio. I feel like it is the bane of my existence. It is the monkey on my back. I guess there's more of my perfectionisms coming in of, is it right? Does it look good? Is this the right order? Should I try something different? Should I not show this? Should I change this colorway? What should I send? What should I not send? Who should I send it to? I think that's everybody's constant thing. And that's something that I just have to put something together and brave up and just do it. And so I need to really start putting myself out there. I have let it go way too long without really putting my stuff out there. While I am thrilled to have a Spoonflower shop, I am so thrilled with my Society 6 shop, and I'm very proud of those things. And I'm putting my designs out there, but I'm really not giving myself enough opportunity to have things manufactured. I've sold illustrations and some things like that, but nothing on a larger scale, which is really my end goal. And so that is something that I really need to start working towards, is making a bigger effort on that. So I think right now I've got some struggles and some things to work through, and that's okay. That's part of being a creative that's doing it professionally, is you have to find the balance between struggling with your business and being creative. It's fun to make pretty things all day, but then there comes to a point where you do have to put your business hat on and go after and work towards those things. And so, that's where I'm at. I have some new patterns and some new collections that I kind of came together spur of the moment, and I'm excited about it. And I'm excited about this new collection. I've shared it on my Instagram a little bit. It came together really fast, like 6 patterns, just boom. It all came together, and it actually it came out of grief. We lost our cat who we'd had for 19 and a half years. And so it's kind of funny how either that can shut you down or put you into creative mode, and it just put me in creative mode. And I love this collection, and I need to share it. I need to put it out there. I need to send it to people and actually make it come to life. And so, so that's where I'm at with all my stuff right now. It's okay to not be selling everything to every company, and it's not always the golden shining star moment. Sometimes it's just the nitty gritty.
Well, I think it might sound funny to say it's sort of a privilege to get to that point, though, because people never get to that point, and that it is that same kind of incremental progress. And as you said, you put it out there. When it's to a point where you feel that you'll put it out there, people will say, hey, I love this, or what about this? But it's just a step-by-step thing. And as you said, you just keep showing up and working, and you have gotten, I know I was saying to somebody about, my progress recently and about some other thing, and they said, I see nothing but progress. So it's like from the outside,
it's different.
Sometimes we forget to look at where we were a year ago. What I get asked a lot, or what people are interested in knowing, is what kind of advice, or if you were a new designer, what sort of advice would you have for where to spend your time? There's like spend it creating work, promoting it. There's so many different things, but where would you suggest people spend their time?
Okay, so I think if I went back based on my own personal experience, and what I would tell somebody, if I would tell myself, is when I first got into surface pattern design, before I even knew it was called surface pattern design, I knew I had a vision for things, but I didn't have the skills. And I would say that that's the number one thing to start with, is develop your skills. So learn how to use Illustrator, learn how to use Photoshop. If you're going to use Procreate, learn how to use Procreate or Adobe Illustrator for iPad, or Affinity Designer, or whatever you're using. Build your skills on that. And while you're learning how to use that program, continually build your illustration skills, your drawing skills, your color palette skills. Just build up all those skills. Don't get rid of your work. Keep your work, because you may use it for something and you may use a piece and part. But I would really spend the time doing that. And I would spend the time making patterns, a million patterns. I think about it, and I might have like a group of motifs, and I might make 10 patterns until I find the one that I really like the way it looks. Spend the time doing that, and then keep everything, because I think you're better off building these skills and developing some of your style and whatever, and then moving into the promoting, trying things on Spoonflower, trying things on Society 6. I think that's a great way to do it. And I love Spoonflower and Society 6 because like Spoonflower, you have to order a swatch before you can sell it. It's perfect. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten a swatch back and I was like, that is not the color palette I saw on my computer.
I know.
Yeah, but that's part of your learning, You're like, oh, I thought that scale was way different than it was. And so it's so valuable to learn through that. And so I really strongly recommend that you start learning your skills, develop your skills, move into the Spoonflower, move into Society 6, and then move into developing your following and those kind of things, and then into pitching your portfolio, because then you'll have laid all this groundwork. So then when people see how fabulous you are and how creative you are, they're going to snap you up and you're ready to go. So I always caution a little bit about social media. Yeah, absolutely. Go and join it. But really, it's okay to be kind of quiet on social media. Find your people, find your friends, find the person that you really like to follow. You're inspired by their artwork. Some of my closest friends I've never met in real life because you just connect through social media. And it's nice to have your people, right? It's nice to have your group. It's nice to find people you can talk to and share things with. And so you can start there, but really develop your skills and slowly share stuff until you've got this big backlog of things, because then you can plan out all your social media and you have control of your narrative. If you do that, you have control of your brand and what you're putting out there. If you build up this big backlog and then you look at what you've got and then you can share it. And so I think that that's valuable because that's a huge time saver too. And you're in control of your narrative, you're saving time. And so focus on that after you've developed your skills. And really, Skillshare is such a fantastic place. I know I'm biased because I teach there, but I was a student there for years before I taught there. I am still a prolific student there because I can always learn something from a class. And maybe I'm going to watch a class and I picked up one tip, but it was one important tip. And so that's kind of my advice. Build your skills. Start finding your people on social media, then build your social media presence, then start pitching your work.
That is such a great, that really makes so much sense. And speaking of Skillshare, I'd love for you to share where people could find your class. And I think sometimes I know people have links for a free, I feel like whatever I pay for a Skillshare membership is like the best $30 a month or whatever I spend. But I don't know if sometimes there are links available or. Yeah.
So a lot of times if you find someone that's got a Skillshare class, like let's say you come to my Instagram account and I share a link to my Skillshare class. If you've never been a member of Skillshare before, you get a little free trial at Skillshare so that you can try out the classes, see what's there. And while, we talk about the art and all that kind of stuff, there are cooking classes, photography classes, business classes, self-care classes, painting classes. If you want to learn it, it's pretty much there. So you can get a free membership to try it out. And so if you're a new person to Skillshare, and if you're not new to Skillshare, well, you just know how fabulous it is already. So you can just click in and join in a class. And it's easy to find me on Skillshare. I'm just Kimberly Crawford on there. So you can find me and follow me. And my 2 classes are there. So I have one class that teaches my process of inking the flowers and how to use that in Illustrator. My second class is taking texture that you create in Procreate and how to use that effectively in Illustrator. Now, there are 11 billion million brushes on the market. So all I talk about in that class is the brushes that are native to Procreate, the brushes that are already within the program when you buy the app. And I give you my 10 best brushes to use to create texture in Illustrator. So I'm trying to just give you a leaping point to start off from in that class of just a basic, here's 10 things that you can try and use. Now go take these skills and find all the brushes you want to use.
It's a great class. And I know that I sometimes can get overwhelmed with all of the choices. And so after I took it, I was like, okay, this is where we're going to start. So I highly, highly recommend it. Where else? And I know is that linked in your, are your classes linked in your Instagram bio?
They are, yeah. Instagram bio. says shop, but I've linked my Skillshare classes, and then my Spoonflower shop, my Society 6 shop, the Roostery, which is the home decor part, Spoonflower, and my Etsy shop. I have a pattern for sale on Etsy as well.
Yeah,
A sewing pattern. A sewing pattern.
yeah.
Cool. Mom and I developed together. I came up with the idea in paper, and my mom helped it come to life in fabric. And it is for a flower tote. So how we go to the farmer's market in the mornings, and we love to get bouquets of flowers. It's a tote bag for carrying flowers. And so that's on Etsy. So yeah, so all of that is linked to my Instagram bio. And really, the best place to connect with me truly is Instagram. I was a beta tester for Instagram when it first started. So
wow.
Yeah. That long. Because for me as a person who loves photos, I just love it. And I love sharing. I love how I can work on something in the afternoon and literally just post about, hey, here's what I'm working on right now. What do you think? Or I just love, I can connect with people. They message me, we talk back and forth. So I really do love Instagram. And I'm sincerely yours, Kimberly, on Instagram. I would love for you to pop over, follow me, say hi, message me. I would love that. If you're working on something you want me to look at, tag me. I love seeing what people are working on. So yeah, I'd love for your lovely followers to come over and hang out with me too. So
well, thanks. And your website, where would people find your?
Oddly enough, it's sincerelyyourskimberly.com.
It's perfect though. It's great to be consistent like that.
Easy to find me. It's very easy to find me online. And so yeah, on my website, you can see a little bit of my portfolio, a little work. But like I said, the most important thing there is my links to places that you can find me. And so yeah.
Well, I want to thank you so much for spending this time with me and with my audience. And I always share my interviews first to my newsletter audience, but then I always share, of course, a copy to the people I'm interviewing, and then working on a YouTube channel so people
that's exciting.
Hook into it. It's just, I love hearing what other people have done. And I know from what I've heard, other people do too. But I just want to thank you so much. I know you have a busy schedule, and it has been such a pleasure to spend this time with you today.
Yeah. I just love chatting with you always, Betsy. I just appreciate you and your creativity and your take on things so much. And I'm just so honored that you would have me here and to chat with everybody. And we need to stop talking because the two of us will just
Well, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you, Betsy.
Bye-bye.